Hello, everyone. Art Burns here. I hope you're all doing well today. I hope that you're having a great day. I hope that the day is treating you well, but I also hope that you're treating you well. I like to say that a lot because it's very, very important that we treat ourselves well. It's important that we treat ourselves with kindness and with compassion. And when we learn to treat ourselves with kindness and compassion, that enables us to treat others with kindness and compassion as well. And this is very, very important to the practice of mindfulness. When we talk about mindfulness as just a sort of strict, basic definition of what it is, it really is just the basic, moment to moment, non-judging awareness of our unfolding experiences, right? In other words, just paying attention to what's happening as it's happening. But an important ingredient in that definition is the non-judging aspect, and this is where kindness and compassion come through. And in fact, there are some people who define mindfulness, like Jack Cornfield calls it loving awareness, right? So there's a very much an aspect to this that includes, very, very importantly, includes kindness and compassion, and I'm going to tell you why. Because, when we're, in fact, kindness and compassion are what allow us to be in the present moment. They are what allow us to really focus our attention on the present moment. And this is because a lot of what will prevent us from paying attention to what is happening as it's happening, right, are our emotions, right? Our emotions are what motivates us as human beings, right? That's what we are motivated by. We are motivated towards things that we want, and we are motivated away from things that we don't want. And this is an emotional process, right? And of course, the emotions are very tightly intertwined with the thoughts in our mind and also with the sensations in our body. In fact, this is a cycle that I talk about a lot, right? A thought inspires an emotion. An emotion, creates a sensation in the body. That sensation in the body sends a signal back up to the brain that kind of influences the next thought, which, if it's a place of that place in your body where you manifest, worry or a past trauma or anger or jealousy or shame or any of these, emotions, that is going to send, that's going to influence another thought that's going to influence that emotion, that's going to influence that sensation in your body, and it's going to create a sort of a looping cycle, right? And this is what we call a mood, right? Now, it can be a good mood, right? You can be, when you have a happy, thought, which inspires a happy emotion, and then a happy sensation in your body, like the sort of butterfly feelings of like excitement, right? And then that influences another thought that's something hopeful and exciting, that then, that emotion of hope and excitement, and it can go upward, but it can also go downward. And unfortunately, because of the way human beings are wired, for our survival instinct and techniques, we are wired for the negative. Right? There's no other way to say it, right? We have this negativity bias in our mind that makes us, see more of the negative aspects of our lives than the positive aspects of our lives. This is in terms of our perception. It's also in the form of what we call automatic negative thoughts, and it also has to do with, sort of the structure of the brain, the whole default mode network, which is, that way that your brain is active while you're not really doing something that you have to devote your attention to, right? This default mode network, influence us to think about the things that are wrong with our lives and wrong with ourselves, right? And so as human beings, we are very, very much, leaning towards the negative, right? And towards the negative emotions, the negative thoughts, and the negative perception of our experiences, right? And so what mindfulness kind of seeks to do, or one of the things that happens in mindfulness, is mindfulness doesn't really seek to do anything. It's just is, right? But as we practice mindfulness, one of the benefits that we get is, number one, we see we acknowledge and we hold in our, in our kind awareness, we hold that this negativity bias is real and it exists, and the automatic negative thoughts, and we see this process almost like a third person, with a third person detachment, I should say, right? So that we can kind of see this happening and see like, oh, look at that, Art. You're thinking about the worst case scenario. That you're thinking about just what might go wrong today. You're thinking about, the worst possible outcome to whatever it is that's happening in your life right now. Isn't that funny, right? because the fact of the matter is that the best possible outcome is equally as possible, right? It's not that there's a more likelihood of something negative happening. It's that we're paying attention to the negative possibilities. Okay, and so this is really, a function of mindfulness, a function of the open, accepting awareness that we develop through this practice, is something that will not only allow us to see this negativity bias, and not only see these negative thoughts, and not only see this, the effect of this sort of default mode network and this selfing that we do, but it will also mitigate it. It will actually also drive it down. It will weaken the process, right? There's lots of studies that show that mindfulness actually reduces the strength of the implicit biases that we have, and the negativity bias is one of those, right? So let's bring it back to kindness, right? So how does kindness and compassion affect all of this, right? Well, when we are consciously and intentionally practicing kindness towards ourselves and towards others, and it always starts with ourselves, right? Because if we, just like loving someone, it's very, very well known that if you can't love yourself, you can never truly love another, right? And that's very, very true, right? It's like you have to, your cup has to be full before you can, pour some into another's cup, right? Philosophers and poets and writers and scientists and everybody's been saying that for our for millennia, right? So let's accept that as a given, right? So the idea, but even aside from that, just the idea of approaching the awareness that we have, right? Each moment to moment awareness of the present moment, right? If we are not approaching those things with a level of kindness and compassion, then what we're likely to do, again, because of the sort of wiring and the default, actions of our mind and our brain, we are likely to engage in the emotions of fear. Right? It's been said that the entire human spectrum of emotions, right, or the entire spectrum of human emotions, I should say, can be really boiled down to one division, right? That every single, what we would consider positive emotion, right? Every single positive emotion can be boiled down to an emotion that is rooted in love, right? Whereas every negative emotion, right, any possible negative emotion that we can feel as human beings can be boiled down to fear, right? So we're either, and again, that's what we talk about, right, with the emotions. We're either, emoting towards something that we want, love, attraction, right, or we're emoting away from something we don't want, fear. Right, so all the anger, the shame, the guilt, the resentment, the jealousy, the mistrust, any emotions that you can think that you can experience that are on the negative end of the sort of spectrum of emotions, you're gonna be able to boil that down and find its roots in fear. Right, now fear is a very interesting thing, right? Fear is what creates the stress response, first of all, right? So when we think about it in those terms, right, which is just a physiological sense, I'm not even getting into philosophy or spirituality here, I'm just talking about on a physiological sense, right? When we are engaged in an emotion that is based in fear, right, we are automatically going to be experiencing everything as we're in that, in that state of that emotion. We're going to be experiencing everything through that kind of filter, right? And that means that everything that we experience, right, we're going to be looking for, again, what's wrong, what could possibly go wrong, what could possibly hurt me here. And what this does is this pulls us out of the present moment, right? Because now we're thinking about, what could possibly go wrong. That means that we're thinking about something in the future. We're not thinking about right now, right? Or how could I have made so many mistakes to lead up to this point, right? We're going into the past. We're no longer in the present moment. So this is what I mean when I say that the negative emotions that we can feel draw us away from the practice of mindfulness, whether it's into the future or into the past, which drawing us away from the ability to truly be present with what is happening as it's happening. And so when we talk about ourselves, right now, a huge emotion that's present when we talk about ourselves, and how compassion and kindness for ourselves is so important, right, is shame, right? The emotion of shame is very, very strong for humans, right? Now it can come from past trauma. It can come from implicit biases and implicit memories that you have as you were brought up to feel, that you were held up to certain standards that were not easy for you to meet. And so now you feel shame, right? And so wherever it's come from for you, right, this shame is a very, very very, very big emotion for humans, right? And in fact, I talked about the default mode network. There's a lot of research that shows that shame, kind of inspires and triggers that default mode network, right? And again, that what's happening in that space, in that time, is we're thinking about all the things that are wrong with us, right? All the things we've done, all the things that we haven't done, all the things that we're not living up to who we're supposed to be, and all this kind of stuff. And once we're in this space, again, it becomes impossible to truly, be present, because we're somewhere else. When we're in that emotion, we're somewhere else. We're not right here, right now. And therefore, every decision we make, every action that we take, remember, our emotions, right? We're going to either be, running away from something or running towards something. And when we're feeling shame, and of course that's inward. When you kind of translate to an outward emotion, it would be anger, it would be resentment, it would be jealousy, it would be these kind of things, right? And when we're acting in one of those things, what we're doing is we're running away, right? We're not moving towards something, we're moving away from something, right? So the idea is then, by expressing kindness and just feeling kindness for ourselves and for others, what we do is we neutralize that negative aspect of our emotional scales, right? And by doing that, remember that cycle I was talking about, right? So the cycle of negative thoughts that equal negative emotions, that equal negative sensations, which inspire negative thoughts, which inspire negative emotions, which create negative sensations. That cycle, once we can inject compassion and kindness, especially for ourselves, what we do is we break that cycle. We just break it right down, right? And of course, this is where our practices come in, right? As we can, sit, like when, it actually just happened to me this morning. I found myself in this sort of negative, cycle, and, I'd already done my meditation, and, it didn't go so well. I have a few things going on in my life right now that are kind of difficult, and kind of, I didn't sleep that well last night. It just happens, it's okay. But I found myself in this sort of cycle, and my meditation didn't go real well, and then I sat with myself and I realized that, wow, yeah, look at you're getting into this negative cycle, and where's it coming from? And it was always coming from somewhere that is a fear, right? And so what I did was I went back into my meditation, and I sat for a little longer, and I really made sure to act kind to myself, and to practice compassion for others, right? And once I did that, I was able to, okay, I'm better now. I'm more centered now. The problems don't go away, right? It doesn't mean that I don't still have things that I have to deal with. I do, right? But now I am able to deal with those things with the full resources that I have, because that is ultimately, that's the practicality of what we talk about with mindfulness, is that by being mindful and by being present and by being compassionate and kind to yourself, what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to employ the full benefit of the power of your mind and your body and your consciousness and your every resource that you have, which when you're in that place of fear, that's not happening because your mind is so preoccupied with these fears that you have and with these different negativity, negative thoughts and negative outcomes and all these things that you're thinking about. You're not here, so you can't possibly devote all of your energy to solving the problem, right? So anyway, I hope this all is helpful for you. If you have any questions about what I'm talking about here, because I say a lot in these videos, I know, and I hope that you like them. But these aspects are really important, especially when it comes to kindness, because a lot of people, back in the early '90s, the Dalai Lama actually came to the U.S. to give a talk to a bunch of psychologists and neuroscientists as part of an ongoing project where he and other monks were being studied by modern medicine techniques like MRI machines and EEGs and stuff, and they were kind of proving the impacts of these millennia old practices that I talk about here. And so the Dalai Lama, on one of these trips, he was standing before a group of scientists and neuroscientists, neuroscientists and psychologists, and actually Sharon Salzberg, who is a very wonderful author and very wonderful teacher of mindfulness, she got up and asked a question, and she referenced self-loathing in the question. And the Dalai Lama was like, self-loathing? What are you talking about, self-loathing? And he talked with his translator for 5 minutes. They couldn't even figure it out. And finally, he understood what she meant. And he looked around the room. He said, does anybody else feel this self-loathing? And when every single hand went up in the room, he almost fell off his chair, And that's the thing, right? So as we practice, of course, the Dalai Lama, I mean, he's been practicing since he was a toddler, and he's put, 100,000 hours probably of meditation, so he has evolved out of that self-loathing and that sort of self-deprecating kind of thought process, right? And of course, I'm not suggesting that you have to do that kind of work to get to that point, but by bringing awareness to it, and it happens much faster than an entire lifetime. Believe me, it does. I'm living proof, because I used to feel a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a lot of anger, and I don't feel these things anymore because I've allowed myself to be kind to myself and to others as I'm paying attention to what is, not what could be and not what has been, but paying attention to what is, but doing so with kindness and compassion. So again, I'm sorry to keep going. I just love that story about the Dalai Lama. There's another story about him. When he stays at a hotel, there's a story about when he was staying in a hotel here in the U.S., right? When he was getting ready to leave, what he did was he had the entire hotel staff, every single employee, they came to the lobby of the hotel, and each one of those people he stopped and talked to for 10 or seconds or 15 seconds or whatever it was, and just looked in their eyes and said I wish you well, that kind of thing, right? Every single employee, that's the kindness, now of course that's at a very big level, but anyway, that's the idea though. The more that we practice kindness and the more that we practice compassion, the more we shed these negative emotions that cause our suffering. And so that's the bottom line here, folks. So I guess I could have said that in a much shorter video, but I hope you enjoyed everything I talked about. And if you did, please, let me know. And if you didn't, or if you have any questions, please let me know that too. I'd be more than happy to help you to understand any of these concepts better. All right. Thank you for listening. I wish you well, and I'll talk to you soon.